David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleasure to take a reading on this bill. The purpose of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is to continue the road user charges by imposing charges on heavy vehicles and certain other vehicles for their use on the roads that are in proportion to the cost that the vehicles generate. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that obviously trucks disproportionately cause damage to our roads than ordinary motor vehicles, ordinary cars. To the several thousand car trips equals one or two truck trips in creating damage to our roads. So it's only right that we look at where the cost to the repair and the maintenance of our roads comes from, and that those users pay their fair share. There was, as my colleague Darian Fenton was just saying, we are supporting this bill, but there are a number of aspects of this bill that we are not happy with. And one of them is, as she pointed out, is the degree of consultation that's actually taken place around this. A number of the major users are opposed to this. This is Toll, a large company, and actually a very responsible company. They're one of the companies actually that both use road and rail. They're moving goods right across New Zealand on a variety of modes of transport. They are unhappy with it. Toll is a company which is prepared to embrace electronic monitoring of their transport fleet and their user charges. They have adopted a system, an electronic system called eRoad, which is from a company based on the North Shore. This is a company that, although we don't perhaps herald it as much as we could, have actually sold their product into the European markets, and particularly into the Scandinavian markets. And it works simply on the basis of having an electronic sensor on the windscreen rather than a hubbometer on the hub of the vehicle, which uses a GPS to measure where the truck is moving to and from. The ingenious part of this piece of technology is that even if the GPS is not working, the revs of the engine and the vibration of the vehicle are also monitored and measured. So even if the GPS isn't functioning, it can still measure approximately through this little computer how far the vehicle has actually moved along the road. And it transmits that back both to the company and to the road user authority, that is the billing authority for the road billing for the road user charge, and that is able to be calculated and a bill sent to the company concerned. So no longer do you have to go and check hubbometers. You can actually do that from the windscreen of the truck itself. And the other ingenious part of this also, Mr. Speaker, is that if you actually try and take this thing off the windscreen, it immediately sends a signal to saying the device has been tampered with, and you can make the appropriate intervention as you need to do. Now, interestingly, many companies in New Zealand are opposed to this. Toll is one of the few companies which has adopted it and is using it, as are a number of the Scandinavian countries where eRoad has been able to take this product to the market, and it's now being a fantastic piece of New Zealand intellectual property that's being marketed and sold offshore. It's just a shame that we can't bring that in a more widespread fashion into New Zealand, because if we did, we would be able to demonstrate to other potential markets across the world that we have confidence in this piece of electronic, this electronic tracking of of vehicles and being able to calculate their user charges. And by having that confidence and demonstrating that confidence, we would be able to help promote that product further overseas. That hasn't yet happened. But I mention that, Mr. Speaker, because really it's really around this piece of legislation. If we are going to have pieces of legislation like this, and there's make some changes, as Diane Fenton outlined, then we should also have the most up-to-date electronic capacity to be able to use this much more effectively. And as I say, eRoad is one of a couple of companies that are able to do that. So coming back to more specifically to the bill, what the bill does, and I stress again that many of the users, the people who are going to be affected by this, were upset. They didn't think that they were being consulted sufficiently. But basically, what we're going to do is move from nominated weights to gross weights for the setting of road user charges. At the moment, road user charges are based on the distance travelled and the weight carried. An operator currently has to estimate the actual gross weight to be carried. He nominates it in advance. Under the changes proposed in this bill, the usual maximum allowable weight of the vehicle will be decided in advance, and the road user charge will be charged on that gross figure, supposedly to simplify the process. So that's what Nathan Guy is saying will happen. The problems, there are a number of problems, Mr. Speaker, in this. The problems stem from the fact that the existing truck fleet has been purchased to work in an existing system. So you have a real problem about actually reclassifying and changing the trucking fleet to have, and those impacts, what the costs and the difficulties in changing in midstream, so to speak, are going to be are largely unknown. But there definitely will be some unseen costs, perhaps that haven't yet been recognised. Under the present system, the first tonne of weight is charged at a rate much less than the last tonne. The last tonne is charged, therefore, at a higher rate because it is the weight at the top end of the scale, sort of the marginal, the reverse of the marginal cost of it, of the top end of the scale, is doing the most damage to the road. So if you've got a 39-tonne truck and you put another tonne on, you've got a 40-tonne truck, suddenly that extra tonne actually does a lot more damage than the first tonne carried by the truck. Under the new system, charges will have to be set for an average weight in each class. If the government still wants to collect the same amount of ruck in each class, and I'd imagine it, I'm sure it does, then operators with trucks within that average weight band will have to pay more to cover lost revenue from the heavier trucks at the top end of the scales. And effectively, what looks like will happen is that the heavier trucks, the trucks that actually are doing more damage, will actually be paying less, and the lighter trucks and the medium-sized trucks will actually be paying, in fact, more. So there's a lot here, although it's Nathan Guy, there's a lot more to this bill than just that, and that's the reason the Labour Party is supporting it. But I wanted to highlight that because it does seem that certainly from what we have heard from some of the submitters, one, that they didn't feel that they were consulted sufficiently, and I believe them when they say that, and obviously they can take the matter into their own hands as they have done in 2008. But secondly, it does seem to me that when looking at who should pay what and the fairness around the system, that perhaps the heavier trucks, which are in fact doing more damage, may actually end up paying less. That to me, Mr. Speaker, doesn't seem quite right. personally, I have some reservations around that part of the bill. However, as we said before, we'll be supporting this bill for the other reasons, although we have spoken about our opposition to some of those parts that I mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Tauhanari.